Hey Malk, hope you're doing well. Like I mentioned earlier, we could try this. Well, I figured I would just give this a shot real quick. Um, it's We're kind of really testing kind of a couple things here. I'm just checking the tech behind this program. There's a friend of mine who does children. Well, he's just an associate pastor up in Minnesota, and he told me about this program. And anyway, you're able to kind of embed a video in the corner of it with also having slides in the background so that you can kind of narrate stuff. So theoretically, there could actually be some good, maybe some teaching things that come out of it in the sense of just saying, we could, I mean, it's one of those things of like if we're just using time together at church to engage with things, we could potentially even just record stuff like this beforehand and have people watch it. So on other than the tech side, though, of course, there's just like the element of, just kind of like thinking through really kind of the other broader topic, which is the question of like, what does it mean for a pastor to oversee a ministry, and how do just churches run different ministries themselves? For us, there's children's ministry, there's small groups, very closely connected to small groups. You have kind of the student ministry, both undergrad and grad. So I think, well, and then Save to Serve a little bit too. But like I think we're actually so involved in Save to Serve, it's really kind of the children's ministry, and those other ones listed. So anyway, I found a book. It's written by a really humble, kind guy named Deepak Reju. Really faithful brother. From all I can tell, I mean, I've listened to some of his stuff and I've interacted with him just a very, very little bit, but it seems in person to be also kind and humble, and hopefully overall has a good thing to say. I think he actually wrote this with another pastor who's been a children's ministry pastor for 20 years. And the first thing, change that. Okay, getting over here. The first thing that they talk about actually are who are the people involved in kind of a children's ministry, and then from here on out, I'll be fast on this because I realize this isn't the deepest dive on where things are going, but I find this framework to be very, very, very helpful to me in terms of understanding the different roles and responsibilities people have, and I'm convinced at this moment that we need for every single ministry a sheet on here, or not on here, just some sort of sheet that writes out our understanding of the responsibilities of the pastor, of the director of this sort of ministry, and the workers in it. I think this one will have an extra one with parents being the fourth one, whereas in a lot of ministries there wouldn't be that. Adjust the camera real quick. All right, so and then this will be a 2-part video too, because there's something else coming, kind of that details stuff that we go into more detail on the stuff. So in terms of the people involved, the first one in this only video is just kind of the first part of the pastor's role. And the first part, and really kind of in terms of the book, the major part of, well, I shouldn't say the major, it was the first thing listed, as the pastor's part is really thinking through the priorities of children's ministry. And the first one that they list is teach the word. They'll have 3. They'll have teach the word, value the children, and then focus on the mission. So for teach the word, it's built on the two foundations. First one being the authority of the word, and its trustworthy nature. Everything it says we can build our lives on a solid rock. And then everything also, and maybe this is actually kind of the harder one inside. Well, maybe the first one as well is actually kind of something to instill in the leaders and in the people from a pastoral perspective in the training of it. But secondly, also, like, everything we want to do is to be shaped by it. He goes into more examples in the book. Again, that's kind of not the purpose of this thing yet. Okay, and then the second foundation in terms of teaching the word is the priority of the gospel. really, I think the background on this it has to do with the fact that a lot of children's ministry curriculum could deal with the fact of, of just moralism, with, David and Goliath becomes us fighting our battles in our lives, and God helps us win it, so to speak. But for ultimately, to kind of put it together, like if to teach the word correctly is to start from a foundation of the authority of the word, and then from there to be teaching in a way that really prioritizes the gospel, that makes very clear the fact that God is God, we are humans created by Him, fallen. Christ redeems us, and then we repent, and turn to Him in faith. That has to be very, very clear in many different ways throughout children's ministry, and then as we're teaching throughout the Bible, we're teaching in a way that the gospel and moral labels are there. One thing I guess that they didn't say, but maybe needs to be added at an even more fundamental level. It just kind of comes in teaching the word, but yeah, an element of children's ministry we'll just be teaching the word each week. They go into how to assess it, looking at the content of the curriculum. Is it biblical and gospel rich? Is it developmentally appropriate? Is it user-friendly for the teachers? Is there kind of understanding the lesson? And then is it fun and creative? And I think that this might be kind of in order of importance, at least like number one, and then maybe you could group 2 to 4 together. And then the second thing is the second priority of children's ministry, that is the responsibility of the pastor to instill in the ministry and the people, would be then the value of children, built on 2 foundations as well, that Jesus himself, while he was down on earth, loves the little children, and just the Imago Dei. So like, whereas there could be kind of a tendency to neglect or treat children, like kind of only find, like kind of in whatever way it diverts from this, really, that we would just view people created in the image of God, and therefore deserving of kindness, dignity, and respect. And so this would kind of come down to, at a very practical level, this element of really warm greetings from the teachers. And I forget, there was something else he was saying. Oh, no, let me see if I can get back to it. Give me 1 minute. Value. Yeah. So he listed kind of warm, kind, and gracious teachers, and then a welcoming and inviting environment. I do think some of this has a little bit more to do with, ages 4 or even 3 up to whichever grade that we would run up to, as opposed to kind of 1-year-olds. But of course, I mean, they're too, but I think just in terms of what he is, the point would be, first graders enjoying the class that they're going to. All right, last one. The last priority of children's ministry this was an interesting one. I didn't see it coming, but I think it actually makes sense on a number of different levels. So the third priority of children's ministry is a focus on the mission. And again, I realize this is only one person's. It's not just one person's opinion. They wrote a book, so there's probably actually quite a few editors and other things like that spoke into it. So it is, but obviously it's not Bible, so we don't have to hold it just as is. But I mean, for now, I actually don't know of better 3 priorities. I could continue looking into it, but the third one, focus on the mission, is really quite interesting, in the sense of what we do throughout. It's like a main priority, really, of the ministry is we model being people who are excited about reaching the world for Christ. And this is the teachers who are teaching each week. We would teach about that thing, just teaching the imperative that we are to go and make disciples. Teach about, I forget, there's a couple other things, again, not the point of this video. Expand one's view of God, expose people to what's happening in the world, and then pray for it. So yeah, to summarize that here, let me see. Okay, I'll get into it and then finish off. The central text that's the basis of children's ministry is Psalm 78. Really beautiful passage. So it starts out with God speaking, "My people hear my teaching." And then again, I mean, it's just beautiful enough. It's worth reading. "We will not hide them." I'm forgetting exactly what's happening in verses 2 and 3, but God's calling the people to hear his teaching. And then I think the people are responding with, we will listen to the things that have been told to us. And then verse 4, "And we will not hide them from I guess they aren't speaking the first person, but whatever, I'll just read it. "We will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonders he has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born. And they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in the Lord God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. They would not be like their ancestors, a stubborn and rebellious generation whose hearts were not loyal to God, whose spirits were not faithful to him." May we also be people who do that. All right, and then finishing up here, the priority central text, and then the last element is kind of, there's a key element of just as a church thinking about children, ministry to children, serving them is just a gospel-rich community where the examples given were things like the one pastor here has, like, he'll vacation with some single women in the church, and they'll be kind of around the children. They'll people will be over at their house for desserts, like things like that, where it's just understood that it's understood, there's actually kind of a couple things in it. One, that it's not just the parents' job to reach the kids, but also second, that the ministry to children of the church is obviously not just happening on Sunday morning, because I mean, one of the big things is and I think this will be one of our biggest battles, if we think about the church as an organization or a brand or something like that, which is like the most natural thing to think about in our day and age. I mean, it's sadly how so many churches just think of themselves and operate. Then, of course, the only things that the church does is it puts on a program on Sunday that then people go to. Whereas, biblically speaking, the church as the people that make up the congregation, well, one of the things that the people that make up the congregation do is teach on Sunday morning, but there's also kind of this ongoing ministry, in that sense, the gospel-rich community is there and key. So I think that might be, we're going back to the people. So there'll be a part 2 video, but just to summarize, the beginning of the pastor's beginning of the pastor's responsibility towards children's ministry is kind of in these 3 areas, where there's starting with the center, there's this central biblical text of, and there could be more, of course, but like starting with Psalm 78, hearing from God what he wants, and then from there bringing out priorities from that of teaching the word, creating a culture in which children are valued, and warm greetings, and just kind of loving on them the whole time. And then especially, this is one thing I forgot, for the focus on the mission, there's so many different stories, that we all live into, and kind of what's a successful life and stuff like that, and those things are formed at a young age. Focusing on the mission is, in some senses, you could almost phrase it as like orienting the children to the great story of God in this world. And maybe in our context, it's even a better way to phrase it, although focus on the mission is great. And then a key element, focus on the mission is actually probably clearer. A key element then would also be gospel-rich community, which is helpful because then it pushes people to understand what things are there. And so, as the final thing, it seems like what he's saying is the first job of a pastor is to to do the sort of work that makes sure that these sort of things are the actual enacted priorities. Because I guess one of the other things that he did, haven't had time to do in this video, is he shows like how, like what this kind of looks like in a day-to-day level, and like what sort of things. So kind of like the pastor's responsibility isn't simply to say these things to people at one point during a training, but in fact to make sure that the enacted ministry has the values of teaching and valuing children and focus on the mission, such that somebody else could look at exactly what's happening from the outside and be asked the question, what are the priorities? And then they would list these three as their things, as well as kind of this general shepherding of the congregation, of creating a gospel-rich community, which then itself will affect kids because they would just be part of it in that way. So, all right, hopefully this works. Hopefully you'll see it. I'll create another one fairly soon, God willing. All right, see you, brother.